Yo guys, so for today's video, right, I'll be covering on this upcoming new launch at Queenstown area called Penrith, and definitely this is one of the more hyped up launches that a lot of the buyers and some of my viewers are looking up for the rest of this year. But at the same time, in this video, I'll be covering on the comparisons that we're going to be looking at in terms of the resale market and why this is important, because you kind of want to see how Penrith can actually stand out when you compare to Commonwealth Towers, Margaret, Ville, Stirling Residences, and even Queen's Peak. So stay tuned to the end of the video to find out more. So for the overviews of today's video, I'll be covering on Penrith's project details, followed by the price trend for all the resale condos in Queenstown area to see whether Penrith can actually mimic that kind of price movement. And last but not least, in the long-term overview for Penrith, does it actually stand out when you compare side by side with all the Queenstown resale condos in terms of site plan, in terms of the unit mix, all these things I'll be covering in today's video. So one of the reasons why Penrith is one of the hotter launches of this year, because the last launch in Queenstown actually is Stirling Residences back in 2018. So later on, I will also be covering when Stirling Residences actually launched. You can see the price range and the price trend that moved up along with the other resale condos back then. I think it's going to be quite interesting, so stay tuned on that. So back to Penrith. So that's why I think with all the HB upgraders in the area, with all the $1 million HB transactions there, definitely the appetite for a new condo there is going to be very strong, and also you have a very strong pool of future buyers next time. Alright, so now for the project details for Penrith. Starting off, this is along District 3, Commonwealth Alexandra area. Total number of units we are looking at is 462 units. Site area 102,000 square feet. So later on, I will also be doing a site area comparison with the resale condos in the Queenstown area. So tenure 99 years, unit mix from 2 bedders all the way to 4 bedrooms. And the unit distribution will be from, you see, the 2 bedders 614 square feet to 678 square feet, 3 bedders 786 square feet to 1066 square feet, 4 bedrooms 1173 to 1281 square feet. So there is no 1 bedders here. It's going to be quite an interesting unit mix. And at the same time, you can see the developers, they are still using the very popular compact 3 bedder layouts, and also they are adding the slightly bigger ones, which is 1066 square feet. So don't be surprised if the layouts are very similar to what we see at Springleaf, because they are the same developers. And then the 4 bedrooms, I think the 4 bedroom compact is going to be very hot because it's at 1173 square feet. Alright, so over here we have the unofficial site plan for Penrith. As you can see, here they have 2 towers, and then they are both 40 stories high. And in the middle, we have the facilities. So the facilities one, I can't confirm whether it's on the ground level, but here say that it's a multi-story car park component. So the whole development could have been elevated up. And of course, there is still a basement car park. Yeah, so for this one, we just wait for official news from the developer on how site plan actually plays out. But from what I see over here, the drive-through will be from the Margaret Drive area. And then at the bottom right corner, we have the tennis court. So I think the main thing to take note here, at least you know that the blocks for the inward facing ones, you actually don't have to get too high, because you're going to be looking directly into the other blocks. Unless you are paying for the outward facing ones, then I think it makes more sense. But you still need to take note of the surrounding buildings and how high they are. Yeah, so I think these are the things that you kind of need to take note of if you're looking at Penrith seriously. Okay, so next up, I'm going to be discussing the key amenities for Penrith. So if you are a Westie, you have already known that Queenstown is a very mature estate, and for its connectivity towards town and also the convenience in the area is very sought after, and that's why you have all the $1 million HDBs. And just now I did mention briefly about the tower views. You need to take note, if you're facing towards the Strathmore Avenue side, you need to see how high is the HDB blocks and how much you need to buy for the floor height to clear the blocks. If you are facing inwards the pool, I don't think there's much of a difference if you go low or high floor. And of course, you still have the other side that you need to take note of. And other than all this, in this area, you're going to be very near to Queenstown MRT, Margaret Drive Hawker Centre, and then they're going to be rejuvenating the Queenstown Sports Centre, Mei Chin Road Market, and you're going to be very near also a lot of other amenities that is closer towards the Stirling side, Alexander side. Just an overview of the Queenstown area if you're not that familiar. Okay, so over here, I have the comparisons of all the potential views that you can get from the Queenstown Resale Condos versus Penrith. So for the other tower that is facing towards the GCB side, you can see it is demarcated by the red triangle. Here you have a really unblocked view towards the GCB area, the Redoubt Park area lah. But if you compare to, let's say, Margaret View, you can see the views is gonna be limited towards the Queensway Secondary School side, and then you have Queen's Peak, Queen's, Stirling Residences. I would still say Stirling Residences, if you're facing towards the landed side, your view is going to be fantastic. But if you're going to be facing towards the HDB side, you still need to clear the HDB, then I think it's still more worth it lah. Yeah, but overall, for Penrith, the first tower, the views is going to be very, very fantastic. But you also need to take note how much price premium you're going to be paying for. And definitely, if you're an investor, you don't want to overpay. So these are just some of the things that you can take note of if you want to compare in terms of views, because I think this will help you stand out in the resale market in the future. Okay, so right now I'm going to be discussing the land bid price for Penrith. So this one was sold on 7 August 2024. So you can see the lead time from the awarding of the land versus the launch date. You are looking about almost 1 year time frame. Okay, so here you can see the PSF PPR for the land is at 1154, and the estimated break-even price we're looking is 2026. So based on this break-even price, right? Actually, if you look at maybe a 30% profit margin, we should be looking at maybe 2004, 2005 PSF range. But we all know this is not going to be realistic, because if you already have seen like for example, the Ori, they are able to transact at $3,000 PSF. I would say Queenstown won't really lose to Toa Payoh area. Maybe you can let me know in the comment section whether you feel the same way, because as mature as Toa Payoh is, I really think Queenstown is a very, very mature estate as well. And the convenience towards the town area is as convenient as Toa Payoh. And that's the first part. Second thing is also, if you take a look at like, let's say Linden Woods, they are also transacting PSF of 2008 plus, and this is pre-harmonization. So realistically, I think for Penrith, it can even hit $3,000 per square feet, and I'm not surprised. And second thing is, if you look closely at the other plots that's bidded this year, one of which I think is very prominent, which is the Lakeside Drive one. So this one tender closed on 3rd June this year, and this was bidded by CDL. So what was surprising to me is the price gap between this Penrith versus this Lakeside Drive block. So for Lakeside Drive, the land bid price was at 1132 PSF PPR. So in terms of land price, it's very, very close to Penrith. So to me, it really doesn't make sense. And you can see the break-even price for the Lakeside one, estimate about $2,000 PSF PPR. If you think about it, right, how can Queenstown, you top up maybe 50 PSF, right, you can get Queenstown over Lakeside. So that's why, I mean, if you're a buyer in today's market and then you compare your options this year versus next year, I think this is definitely one of the major drivers in terms of why buyers are looking in the market today. Because if you watch some of my previous videos, you can see the supply in the OCR, RCR area next year, right? And then on top of that, you look at the pricing that the developer have acquired the land for, it does really seem like this year, the price arbitrage is very, very high, and a lot more in terms of opportunity. Because really, if you are Westie, you know the difference between Lakeside and Queenstown. For Lakeside, right, maybe other than Rulang, which is a very famous primary school in the west, it doesn't have a shopping mall area there. Yeah, whereas for Queenstown, to be honest, it doesn't have a shopping mall as well. But when you go in the area, you want to go to town, actually it's much more convenient as compared to Lakeside. Yeah, but you can let me know if you think Lakeside realistically can sell at 2004, 2005, because this is definitely the direction we are heading into in 2026. Right now, we're going to be comparing, right, Penrith versus the resale comparisons in Queenstown. And then you can see in terms of locale and distance towards the MRT, definitely Penrith is not the nearest plot. There is much nearer plots such as Commonwealth Towers, Queen's Peak, and Queens. Whereas for Stirling Residences and Margaret View, they are slightly further away. So you can see if this MRT factor will actually affect the price performance for all the condos in the Queenstown area. Okay, so right now I'm going to be studying the price trend and price performance, right, for the resale condos in Queenstown. I've excluded Queens because I think it's slightly older, but I've included the other four. So at least from this, you can see just from Stirling Residences when it launched, right, would it have made more sense to enter Stirling, which is a new launch, or should they have entered one of the resale projects nearby? And the other component is the price trend, right, whether historically it has been performing well, or is Queenstown an area that you should actually avoid. So now let's take a closer look. Okay, so you can see based on the price trend for these 4 projects, right, Stirling Residences actually launched in Q3 2018. So I'm using that as a starting point versus the other 3 projects, Queen's Peak, Margaret, Ville and Commonwealth Towers, in the same time period. So some of them already launched or are in the resale market. So the time frame is around 2016 to 2018 period. But just for you to take note, I'll be starting from Stirling because that one is the period when it launched. So you can see when Stirling actually launched, right, 2018, it was at 1766 PSF. Okay? Then you compare to Queen's Peak, it was averaging 1752, Margaret Ville averaging 1874, Commonwealth Towers 1884. And then now fast forward to 2025, you can see Stirling Residences managed to clock in $2,400 PSF. So this net a gain of 36% over a 7-year period. Queen's Peak rose to 2196 PSF, 25% growth. Margaret Ville rose to 2278 PSF, 21% growth. Commonwealth Towers rose to 2002 PSF at 17% growth. So this data, right, is also not that in-depth yet because I never filter by each bedroom type, but overall as a project you can see which one is more healthy. Because I mean, like, if you look at Stirling, the number of transactions per month is still a lot more healthy as compared to Queen's Peak. Margaret Ville still okay, looking at 4 per quarter, and then Commonwealth Towers we are looking at 6 per quarter. So overall these are the numbers that you should be more concerned about. And at the same time, what do you think led to Stirling Residences outperformance versus the other 3 projects? And even in the other 3 projects, right, you can see actually why Queen's Peak outperformed Margaret Ville and Commonwealth Towers. Because Queen's Peak, if you see, I know some of the layouts not that fantastic, but why are they able to record a higher profit margin as compared to Margaret Ville and Commonwealth Towers? Because I think for Margaret Ville and Commonwealth Towers, definitely they are all very decent projects. I've seen some of the units and the site plan, they are looking very good. But why did Queen's Peak outperform the 2 of them? Later on in this video, I'll be looking deeper into the site plans and also all the unit mix, whether all these factors will affect the price performance in the long run, and whether Penrith can actually follow the price performance of Stirling Residences, or will it be lagging slightly behind Commonwealth Towers and Margaret Ville. But in the end, right, we're still looking at very decent profit margins. Of course, the different bedroom types will have different price performance. I think for the 3 bedders, 4 bedders, the profit is a lot more in terms of percentage. Yeah, so all these minor details we'll be looking in closer. Alright, so first up, we're going to be talking about Stirling Residences. So this one is TOP 2022, and then the land size, we're looking at quite a decent plot. This is 227,000 square feet of land size, and total number of units 1259, plot ratio of 4.2. And then next up, you can see based on the residential status, so 76% comes from Singaporeans, 19% PR, 4% foreigners. And then this is the crucial part, okay? Purchaser address, right, means previously where they were from. So private property makes up 52%, and then HDB, right, which means HDB upgraders usually 47%. So almost half of Stirling Residences community or buyers comes from HDB. And next up, we have the unit mix. To be honest, when I saw the unit mix, I was a bit worried. I was like, wow, actually they got so many 1 bedders, so many 2 bedders, and the 3 bedder, 4 bedder forms a very small proportion of the unit mix. But in the end, if you look closely at Stirling Residences, even their 2 bedders also making a huge profit margin. Is it fair to say that unit mix is not that important in Queenstown? Maybe not, but overall, at least I see the unit mix component not being a major factor in Queenstown. So if Penrith has a better unit mix than this, then I might be more confident, because even Stirling Residences, they have such a heavy concentration of 2 bedders, but it is still performing well in the resale market. Okay, so next up, we're going to be talking about Queen's Peak. So this one TOP 2 years before Stirling Residences, and this has a land size of 113,000 square feet. So this one, in terms of land size, very similar to Penrith. It's not that far apart. and plot ratio is 4.9. Total number of units is 736. So if you compare, right, you see land size is quite similar to Penrith, but the number of units is at least 50% more for Queen's Peak. So in terms of the density of the land, you do feel like actually Queen's Peak is definitely a lot more cramped. Like the number of people sharing the lift, the number of people sharing the facilities, it won't be as spacious as compared to Penrith itself. So second part we're going to be looking at is the residential analysis. So 81% of the buyers coming from Singaporeans, 12% PR, 6% foreigners. Previous purchaser address, private side 51%, and then a significant portion still comes from the HDB upgraders, 48% coming from them. So definitely you can see the exit target audience being very obvious over here. And last but not least, we have the unit mix. So for this Queen's Peak development, the good thing is that they have a healthier mix with a higher concentration of the 3-bedders when you compare towards Stirling Residences. So not saying that this is skewed towards the bigger bedrooms, but it is still higher than what we see at Stirling Residences. So here you can see 1-bedders 100 plus units, 1 plus 1 95, 2-bedders 190, and then the 3-bedders and 4 and 5 onwards. So here unit mix also not that fantastic, but still good enough to see that kind of profit margin in the Queenstown area. Okay, so right now we're going to be going through the third one. This is Margaret Ville. So this one TOP 2021. Actually quite funny, you can see all of them they taking turns to TOP. One in 2022, then now this one 2021, then the other one 2020. And the land size for this one is definitely the smallest out of all the comparison. This at 51,000 square feet, okay? And this is almost half the size of Penrith, and plot ratio 4.6, total number of units 309. If you really can see, right, like this is half the size of Penrith, and at the same time 300 plus units. Penrith, right, double the size of this and 400 plus units only. So definitely in terms of density of the development, Penrith is going to be a much better product. And residential analysis, we got 80% Singaporean, 60% PR, and 3% foreigners. Purchaser address, you can see 61% private property side, and then HDB upgraders, we are looking at 38%. So there's already a slight preference, right, for the bigger land plots from the HDB upgraders. So be very clear in your exit audience, okay? And then floor plans, you can see the 1 and 2 bedders slightly more, but overall you're still not looking at a very heavy skew because here in the end you're only working with 300 plus units. So overall I don't think you will feel that much of a difference. But for the 3 and 4 bedders, they only form about 100 plus units out of the 309. So maybe about 30+% forms the bigger units, the rest is still on the 1 and 2 bedders. So all this could contribute to the preference and the price performance for Margaret Ville. That's why you can see actually Margaret Ville is lagging behind slightly. But of course I haven't talked about entry prices, all these, those are a separate discussion. But just to look at the unit mix and also the number of units and the land size. Okay, last but not least, we have Commonwealth Towers. So this one is TOP in 2017, okay? Land size 130,000 square feet. So to be honest, Commonwealth Towers, the land size compared to Penrith, I mean it's about 30,000 square feet difference, but all in all, it's not that big of a difference, okay? But over here, we have 845 units. So by right, if you're looking at Penrith numbers, then it should be double, right? Like for example, shouldn't the land size be closer towards like a 200,000 square feet if you compare based on same number of units? Yeah, so in terms of density, definitely Penrith does offer a better product overall. Residents there, you won't feel so cramped and you won't feel like the facilities are so heavily used as compared to Commonwealth Towers. And the next up is the residential analysis. So here 73% Singaporeans, 18% PR, 7% foreigners. And then same thing here, you can see just from the bigger land plots, the HDB upgraders form 50%, private property purchasers form 49%. And the next point we have the unit mix. So here quite heavily skewed towards the 1 and 2 bedders, okay? 1 bedders 341 units, 2 bedders 271 units, 3 bedders 195, 4 bedders 38. So you can see here the 3 and 4 bedders, right, actually only form slightly less than 250 units. So this effectively is less than 30%. So that's why you can see actually Commonwealth Towers also didn't perform as well, because a lot of the units, if they are in the 1 and 2 bedders, definitely the returns will be lower, and then it pulls down the price performance of the entire development. But maybe if we look closely into the 3 bedders and 4 bedroom performance, it could very well tell a very different story. So if you want to find out more like into the different bedroom types, you can WhatsApp me at 84849302 because I think to not drag the video too long, I think it's more helpful, right, to address all of this specific bedroom price performance on an individual basis. Yeah, so you can WhatsApp me, then we can connect to find out more. So now, just to give you a summary, right, I put everything side by side so that it's easier to digest. So you can see for Queen's Peak TOP 2020, Stirling TOP 2022, Margaret Ville TOP 2021, Commonwealth Towers TOP 2017. And then over here you can see all the land sizes side by side. So Queen's Peak will be the most similar in terms of land plot size, but you can see the number of units being significantly higher than what we see at Penrith. And then in terms of unit number, we are the closer towards Margaret Ville. So Margaret Ville, the land size is half of what we see at Penrith. Yeah, but the number of units is still 300 plus. So definitely I think Penrith offers something unique in this area because it's in between these two, but it doesn't compromise so much on the number of units. So let me know in the comment section, like, actually now if you look at it objectively, then maybe Penrith might not be such a bad project after all. Okay, so after I have already shared the comparisons based on the site plan and some of the project details between these resale comparisons, right, why did Stirling Residences actually outperform the rest? Is it really just due to the land plot, the size, or are we looking at other factors? So over here, right, the first thing I want to mention is actually the transaction volume. So here you can see in terms of transaction volume, actually Stirling Residences is the strongest one. We are looking at 114 units being transacted in the past 1 year. Queen's Peak 50 transactions in the same time period. Commonwealth Towers 48 units, and then the last one will be Margaret Ville 28 units in terms of volume. So this one is actually very closely related in terms of the price performance, because in the end, if there's higher volume, very likely there will be more price discovery, and at the same time it shows that the market is more ready to absorb some of the supply. Okay, so the next thing I want to address, right, is whether the distance towards Queenstown MRT does have a factor. Stirling Residences being the best performer and the highest transaction volume, it actually is one of the further ones from Queenstown MRT, because if you see Commonwealth Towers, Queen's Peak is definitely much nearer towards Queenstown MRT, and if you look at the map itself, I would say Penrith is probably closer towards Queenstown MRT as compared to Stirling Residences. This is just purely from eyeballing, I'm not that sure. And of course, Margaret Ville is gonna be quite far away from both of them. It's about 10 minutes in terms of walking distance towards Commonwealth MRT or towards Queenstown MRT. So we have concluded that being nearer to the MRT doesn't necessarily mean that it has a better price performance. So that's component number one. Component number two, right, there's a possibility that being further away from the MRT does benefit in terms of the demand, because if you guys are familiar, the east-west line, right, it's open air one. Okay, so very likely if you're near MRT, you can hear when the MRT go near to the station, you have the braking sound, or when it go past the MRT, it will have the basically very noisy train track sounds. But being further away from the Queenstown MRT, it could help in terms of noise pollution. So that's why there could be a reason that Stirling Residences is more popular, because you won't really get the direct impact of the MRT. So I do foresee Penrith having that benefit over Queen's Peak and Commonwealth Towers. Of course, Margaret Ville is definitely going to be more quiet because it's already not that near the MRT station. But if you see closely, right, actually Margaret Ville, even though it's not near the MRT, it is still near the MRT track. So you could still get a sizable amount of noise pollution on Margaret Ville side. Yeah, so in terms of distance away from the MRT tracks, Penrith and Stirling Residences will offer similar attributes. Okay, so right now we're going to be talking about the site plans. First up, Stirling Residences, we're going to be looking at is 227,000 square feet of land. So you can see this is a very big plot of land, and we have a total of 3 towers. So on top of that, right, you can see there's a tennis court at the bottom, and in terms of facilities and how the overall development is spaced out, you won't feel like it's very cramped. And you can see the 3 towers, they are side by side, so you're not going to be facing the opposite block directly. So overall, in terms of like livability of this development, definitely is the best one already, because the developer had a lot of land to play with. So second thing is Queen's Peak. Queen's Peak, right, we are looking at 113,000 square feet. So do bear in mind that this one, you have one side facing towards the MRT. But other than that, the other side one won't be as noisy. And then you got two blocks here. But overall, you can see the developer actually didn't really make full use of the land, because you can see here, in terms of amenities and facilities, actually quite lacking. You only got a full-size swimming pool, right? But other than that, the rest of the things is quite lacking. So now moving on to Commonwealth Towers. Commonwealth Towers, if you look closely, this is 130,000 square feet land. And in terms of facilities, right, definitely this is much better than Queen's Peak. And of course, you still got one side that's facing nearer towards the MRT. But other than that, you got a full facilities like swimming pool, tennis court, all this. So I think in terms of livability here is much better. And last but not least, Margaret Ville. So this one, 51,000 square feet of land. And then you can see we only have one block. So this one actually is quite close in terms of facilities towards Queen's Peak. And you can see for Margaret Ville, you got a proper lap pool, and then I think you got the other gyms, other facilities basically on the sky terraces. But if you compare to Penrith, right, if you remember just now at the very start of the video, you can see over here for Penrith at 102,000 square feet, we already have tennis court. So this one, right, is a very good addition because it's going to be having attributes of, like, let's say Commonwealth Towers. But this is something that Queen's Peak and Margaret Ville don't have. And on top of that, because they elevate the entire development with the facilities, it could look slightly different from the rest. Yeah, but this one we had to wait for confirmation. I don't really know what is the exact breakdown, but because their land is like bigger in that sense, they are able to squeeze like two towers with the facilities and tennis court rather than just like one or two blocks and then limited facilities. Now, so I think Penrith does offer something in between. Okay, so next up, I'm going to be talking a little bit about the layouts. So for Penrith, right, the layouts are not out yet, but if you have seen my previous video talking about Queen's Peak versus Commonwealth Towers, you can go and take a look. I briefly talk about the 3-bedroom layouts comparison. But of course, if you want a more in-depth one, right, you can feel free to WhatsApp me at 84849302. I'll be more than happy to do a detailed breakdown of the layout gaps that I can see in the Queenstown area, and this can potentially help you form a more informed decision and which one I feel is a better development in terms of layout. Okay, so for the next part, I'll be doing a PSF Gap Analysis, right, for the resale condos there, and then you can see how much pricing we are looking at for Queenstown area and how much to actually enter Penrith that makes sense. You don't want to overpay, correct? So first up, we have Queen's Peak. So the average transactions recently, we are looking at 2196 PSF. So I just add in the harmonization component about 7%. So if you just multiply that in, we're looking at 2349 PSF. And do bear in mind that this one TOP in 2020. So Penrith looking to TOP 2029. So we are looking at a 9-year gap in terms of when it TOPs. Okay, and Stirling Residences 2406 PSF. And then if you harmonize it, we are looking at 2574 PSF. Margaret Ville 2278 PSF, and then if you harmonize it, 2437 PSF. Last but not least, we have Commonwealth Towers 2217 PSF, and then after harmonization, it is 2372 PSF. And of course, if you want a more detailed comparison, right, you need to use the PSF, do the lease reset, then you really know how much you're paying per year. So I mean, overall, if you just look at this, right, I would think that for the Penrith, definitely you're gonna be paying at a very safe entry price, even at 2006, 2007 PSF, because you see at Stirling Residences, the newest TOP project, we're already looking at 2574 PSF in terms of today's harmonized pricing. And this one, the tenure actually started from 2017. So for Penrith, right, the tenure actually started in 2024. So we are looking at a 7-year gap. Price gap, maybe you add about $50 per year, right? We are still looking, even if you add $300 plus PSF, right? Penrith, it means it can accept the pricing up to $2,900 per square feet. So definitely, I think the resale projects here does offer a very good buffer in terms of PSF gap per year. Okay, so last but not least, I'm going to be talking briefly about the master plan in this Queenstown area. So something I really like is that in the surrounding Queenstown MRT area, to be honest, there isn't that much plots of land left unless you move towards the Commonwealth area, that side. So you can see here, you still got a couple of plots that is saying subject to detailed planning. So what I like about all this is that they could be HDB or they have the potential to be future new launches. Then the government can just carve out more land, and this will help to form up a new price ceiling in the entire area. I'm not saying that Penrith is the only good buy in this area. You can see for Stirling Residences, Commonwealth Towers, I'm very confident that they will still continue continue to have upward price momentum in the area because of Penrith forming a new price ceiling in terms of PSF in the area. Definitely it will still push up the price due to Penrith. Having all these new plots coming up, it can also further push up Penrith pricing down the road in the future. And if it's subject to detailed planning now, we could be looking to 5 to 10 years down the mark. My own personal thing, okay, very low chance I feel that these are going to be HDB, because right now the government, because of all the Dawson plots, right, they have created a very big problem for themselves, because all the Dawson HDBs, they are easily transacting at 1.4, 1.5 million. And I think this goes against the sustainable, affordable motto for HDB. HDB becomes a very commoditized product and it's very expensive. Yeah, and it doesn't look good on the government itself. Yeah, so if they release HDB, it could be all like in the 3-room, 4-room range. If not, it's gonna be future new launches. Yeah, so you can let me know in comment section what do you think of this. This is my personal take. It's very high chance it's likely gonna be new launches. If not, they might even do, I don't know, maybe shopping mall. I'm not too sure, but I feel like the HDB side, it should be on the lower probability already, because I don't see the HDB they launch, it's gonna be cheap anyways. Alright, so to wrap it up, I really think Penrith does offer something different in the Queenstown resale market. So in 2029, I'm quite sure they will have their own fair share of buyers looking at that development. And if you gain some valuable takeaways from my video, you can feel free to leave a like and subscribe. And also, if you want to check out my other YouTube videos, which I've done in-depth analysis for the upcoming launches and the market itself. And last but not least, you can contact me at 8484-9302 if you want to view the preview for Penrith that's coming up very soon. Looking forward to hear from you guys. Bye!